Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, Willie. Good afternoon. One more time.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good
here.
afternoon. Yes.
I see a peacock on your screen.
What do you see?
Is that a peacock on your screen?
On my screen?
Yeah.
No.
Uh-huh. What is
It's at the back on the wall. On the wall.
On the wall. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That was I don't know what is the name of the animal. It was some kind of mascot of the conference 2018, I think, in Bangkok. Okay. 17 or 18.
No, there is one on your screen. Oh, that's one. That's the one. Yeah, that the color one. The squirrel-like thing.
Huh?
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
This, yeah. Squirrel.
Squirrel.
Ah, this is a squirrel. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was some kind of logo animal of the Thailand conference.
Mascot. Okay. Yeah.
In mascot in 2018.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Good to see everybody here. I think some people are yet to log in after they have logged in the first time. You had a fantastic set of slides, Willie. I'm going to enjoy looking at them again and again.
I hope so.
It's an education for me. There are things there that took me into new directions.
Thank you.
Today, everybody is going to see them for a few seconds at a time, while I'm going to see them for many hours at a time.
Right.
Today we have Irina, of course, that's good. Okay. Who joined us? Jega probably will join us later. That's what he told me. Jega, as you know, was the last speaker on the 6th of February, 2 weeks back.
Yes.
I think I see Amparo over there at bottom. Garcia Carbonella.
Yeah. Hello, Amparo.
She is not yet there. It'll be good to see her. I've not spoken to her for a long time, since the last meeting at Warsaw. She's still in the hiding. I hope others join us. There she is.
Hi.
Hi. How's Spain? Oh, we have Claudia. That's good.
Hi, Claudia.
Laura Angelini. That's good. Amparo.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Great to be here.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello from Spain as well.
Hello.
Amparo, we need to hear you. I think you're on mute.
She's here. She's here. We are in the chat, but I don't know where she is now.
She is. There she is. No, she's still on mute. No, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute. No, you're still on mute. No, we can't hear you.
I have her in the WhatsApp, but I don't know what's the problem with her computer.
Okay, fine. I think those signals are in Spanish, so I can't understand them. Okay, David is here. That's good.
Hello, Toshiko.
Hello.
Hi, Toshiko.
Yeah. Really, you have new glasses. Am I right?
Yeah, it's just for reading. It is still, I do not want to somehow admit that I need glasses. So it is still a very cheap kind of supermarket glasses just for reading.
You are young enough.
So I could put it even off now because I can still read from this distance.
Did you?
But it's a little bit more comfortable with the glasses. I think I have to buy real glasses now. Hi, Marcin.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Martin. Dr. Dubey.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
So we start within 5 minutes as Vice Chancellors are joined.
okay. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Indian time.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Willie. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Nice to see you after 1 year now, more than 1 year.
More than a year.
So I think we can start. Everybody is very eager to listen to you. Jigyasu, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Rani, please.
Shall I start, sir?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, a very good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya, I, Rani Singh, welcome you all in today's webinar on Gaming Simulation Design for Education and Social Impact, organized by Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya and International Simulation and Gaming Association, ISAGA. It's a pleasure to inform that today we have with us Dr. Willi Kriz, Professor, University of Applied Science, Vorarlberg, Department of Management and Social Science, Dortmund, Austria. Before beginning the webinar, I would like to invite Conference Chairman, ISAGA-2021 and Honorable Vice Chancellor of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya, Dr. Upinder Dhar, for welcome address. Over to you, sir.
At the outset, I would like to welcome Dr. Willie Kriz this webinar. We are happy to welcome you and see you after a long time. As you know that we had to organize ISAGA 2020, but because of COVID-19, that could not happen. But then I'm thankful to the board for allowing us to organize ISAGA in 2021. We thought that why not to remain connected? It is necessary, although there is COVID, the pandemic is still on, we need to do something so that we remain connected with each other. That is very important. So we started this webinar series a few months back. And first webinar was delivered by our own Professor Sebastian, which was very well received. More than 500 participants were there. And then followed by other ISAGA members. And so far, I think about 10 webinars have been held and all very well received. We were very eagerly waiting for this particular seminar, which will be delivered by Professor Willie. And as we know that he's well-known, very eminent professional, and particularly in simulation and gaming. So not speaking much before Professor Willie Kriz and all eagerly waiting participants, I once again welcome the resource person on this special occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I am glad to welcome and introduce today's speaker of the webinar, Dr. Willie Kriz. Dr. Kriz is a professor for human resource management, organizational behavior, leadership and change management at FHV Austria. He is working as a researcher, lecturer, trainer, consultant, and designer with different forms of simulation and games. He is author of 15 books and about 200 papers and received 4 Best Paper Awards. He is founder and was 15 years chairperson of SAGA, Swiss-Austrian German Simulation and Gaming Association. In 2004 and 5 and 2014 and 15, he was a president of ISAGA, International Simulation and Gaming Association. He organized 2 ISAGA conferences. He is the founder and was 10 years director of annual ISAGA Summer School on Game Design. Now, I request Dr. Willie Kriz to enlighten us with his knowledge. There's a request for the audience. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box or QA section. I will bring them up at the end of the presentation, and we will also have time for questions at the end. Now, over to you, Dr. Willie, sir.
Okay, good afternoon. Namaste to all of you around the world, and especially in India. I will start by sharing the screen. So can you see my screen right now? Is my voice clear and loud enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can see the screen. Your voice is also clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I will start the lecture part. As I was just already introduced, I will skip the first slide about myself. And I would like to start with this nice picture showing the concept of Leela, which is probably, hopefully, known to all of you in India and maybe to some in the rest of the world. But it's deeply rooted, of course, in the Hindu religion, and it is connected with the thought that the whole universe is a form of a cosmic play. And probably we all are actors in this drama of life. And it also points to the creativity of the evolution and of the creation. And in this sense, we are all co-creators of of the evolution and of the creation. So therefore, I'm very glad that I'm invited to speak to you and organized by your wonderful university and institute in India, because it is, of course, one of the motherlands also of gaming, I would say, and the deeper philosophic thought behind of it. And if we look into the history, of course, we see some other aspects that are unfolding, some kind of drama, as we found it in the Mahabharata, the play of the Pandavas, and probably it is not such a good idea from Yudhishthira to gamble away his wife Draupadi, as you probably know, and of course with a game that involves also some form of gambling, maybe some aspects at least of luck, like we find it in Pachisi or Chaupar. And that maybe that kind of drama that unfolds here is maybe also points to some kind of a dangerous aspect, that some people can develop some kind of gaming disorder, some kind of addiction to games, and especially a very dangerous aspect of gambling. But let it make very clear from the beginning, gaming simulation has nothing to do with gambling. But nevertheless, we see that some drama can go on with games and within games. Games are an aspect of culture in all cultures. So if you look to the old Egyptians, for example, 3,500 years before Christ, the game of Senet was some kind of a representation of thoughts of their religion, of their philosophy. It is a game board, but it also is some kind of a hybrid game, because there's also some role play involved. And it is about the player take the role of the judge in this mythological trial of the soul after death. So it has to do with the religious beliefs of the old Egyptians, how the soul is developing and what is happening after death. And so in this sense, it is some kind of also an educational game to teach about the basic beliefs of that kind of culture. And of course, it is also as an artifact, it is also representing the culture of the old Egyptians at that time. And that points to a great man, Huizinga, who wrote the book Homo Ludens. It's about the idea that play is an important element in culture and of culture, and in general that the human species is a playful species. And already mammals and human beings are playing, and in the developing, in the evolution of the species and to the human being, the higher mammals and animals, they started to play. And we can see that there is some kind of co-evolution of social skills, cognitive skills, consciousness, the ability to reflect, and the ability to play games. So that is somehow interconnected. So that is very important. As you can see, for example, two of cats. We have two cats at home. They are involved in some kind of play fight. So that is the term. And they prepare in a playful way for emergency situations with the neighbor's dog, for example. And you can see the same principle at work with child play. So it means that children, they are developing through playing, and there are different types of play and different phases of play. I don't go into child play right now, but I just show the pictures that you understand how important it is for the individual to develop, to use different forms of play to understand the world, to get an understanding, to train social abilities and skills, and to find a place in the world with different forms of play. Here you can see my kids when they were a little bit younger. my son feeding the doll, and so taking the role of a careful father and learning about maybe some social skills, and also acting out maybe some experience he had during the day or in the previous weeks and days. And to cope also with certain kind of situations. And you can see my daughter when she was a little bit younger in the preschool, and she is playing here the car driver, and it is some kind of education for the kids for traffic situations. So many things are real in this kind of game. So it is already some kind that I would call a simulation game, but the consequences are not so bad like in the real traffic situation. So the idea is you can play through critical situations that are authentic, real, and learn something for the real world to behave better in critical traffic situations. Of course, as you can see here, there are no cows on this street, and it is a typical Austrian traffic situation. She would not be prepared by using this game for India traffic situations, probably. What you can see is that we have many different kind of elements in games and in simulation games. One very important tradition comes from the theater. It has to do with the role play, with actors, with stories and narrative perspective. Another very important influence and elements come from sport and competition. Of course, if it is a team sport, there's also involved some kind of cooperation in the team, but also some kind of competition with other teams. It has to do with challenges, it has to do with skills and performance. And therefore, very often in some of those kind of games, you also need strategies. You try to reach some goals. And for this, you need measurement processes, you need scores and tracking systems, which are also part in many simulation games, of course, nowadays. And this is maybe a third perspective, that games can somehow display and use. And in the reality, we find that people play games of power. So different interest groups fight maybe for influence or to make certain decisions. So on the political area or in some other kind of circumstances, you find that people play games for power. And that is also another perspective, that very often it is found also in simulation games, that they deal with conflicts between different stakeholders and interest groups. And so that leads to the question, what is maybe a serious game or a serious simulation? Here you see some examples, like very often there's made a reference or analogy to the flight simulator or to a simulated doctor in a simulated hospital, for example. So that is for students who want to become a doctor, study medicine, or some logistic processes simulated in this game from DHL. And nowadays the term is mainly used for digital games, which is using 3D video technology. And it is by definition, a serious game is designed for the purpose more than just pure entertainment. It is connected with the game-based learning. So it's a game that is not only for entertainment, but also for learning purpose. But the problem, as you can see from this picture, so soccer is a very top sport in Europe and around the globe. So is this also a serious game? Probably it is not meant as a serious game because it is just a play in itself. It's not simulating another kind of reality. But if you see how much it is worth, if you sell one player for 100 million of euros or dollars, and I don't know how many billions of rupees, you can understand that it's getting some kind of serious business at least. Or games can get into a completely different meaning. They can be very serious. If you take the game from one of my favorite Bollywood movies of Lagan, yeah. Here it can become a fight for freedom to beat the British out of the power. So even so that leads to the idea that it is not really clear what is a serious game. Somehow it is more a marketing term. It is easy to understand, but from a scientific point of view, the term itself makes no sense. But we can still use it as a marketing term. It's not so bad. But it is more than just playing a game for education. Many colleagues, David Krukel once said, it is more games that have a serious debriefing for learning. So that would maybe an important aspect to add. To make a game serious, you need some kind of a serious debriefing of the game, a reflection of what is happening in the game and what can we learn from the game for the reality. And therefore, it is also true that you can say, okay, a serious game might be a game that has a serious effect or outcome in the real world. So that really has some kind of social impact if we use the game for the reality. But if we look back in the history, it has nothing to do with 3D video technology and even digital games. If we look into the book from Up in the 1970s, it was not a time where everybody had a computer. So he was talking about serious games, but his primary reference was to board games and card games that can be loaded with content and to make it educational. And that idea is that you can use games for education is very old. I have some books in my library that are more than 120 years old, from the beginning of 1900. Education by play and games, or games for the home school and gymnasium, for example. These are two examples that show that the thoughts to use games for pedagogic and didactic reasons is quite old. And you can see it in many games. They have to do something with a journey in time and space. So many of these old educational games, you can learn something about geography, maybe in a city, maybe in space, or maybe in a town. But also you can often learn something about history, historic developments. Or here a game from Russia above. It is the way of life of a worker. Or in the right lower corner, a game, also early game, more than 150 years old, from the USA, where you start as a lift boy and then you can make a career until you are president of the company. So so that shows that also games are used for education. Okay, how can you proceed in your life? How can you make a development in your life and in your career? If we take one famous game that is played all over the world, like Snakes and Ladders, that you probably know, you can just play it for fun. That's okay. There are different formats, as you can see here, different versions of the game, and it's nothing bad if you just use it to play for fun. But if you put content into it about cause and effect relationships, and take knowledge from the real world to load the game with it, to add content, you can use it as a serious game. You can use it for education. For example, here it is done with health education. Breast milk leads to, it's positive, it's a ladder to a healthy baby, but dirty bottle is obviously something wrong, so it's connected with a snake, and then it's probably a sick baby or whatever. So that is how you use then a typical game that was originally for entertainment, with adding some content, and you make it a serious game. Another example for business education and for moral and ethics education. And that is very important now, because here it starts to become a simulation game. If you take again the principle from India, I don't know how many of you are religious persons from the Hindu religion, but some of you might be. If you take the principles of snakes and ladders, how it was originally meant as an educational tool, also to show the principles of karma, reincarnation, and moksha in the end. If this is your reality, then Snakes and Ladders is not only an educational game, it's more than a serious game, it's a simulation game, because that is the difference. A simulation game is not only content from the reality. A simulation game is about simulating processes of the reality. But if you believe in the principle of karma and reincarnation, then this is a process of development. And if you think that this process of development is true, is real, then Snakes and Ladders becomes a simulation game, because it simulates that process of reality. Of course, you can argue this is not reality, and many people who follow other religions, they will say it's not real to me. So for me, it's not a simulation game. It's maybe only a serious game. And if you take, for example, chess, that is another game that is also popular in India. From the chess game, the Peruvian army already in the 16th century developed war games. They are chess-based, but made with some additional rules and additional units of military units and landscape units. They used it, but it's based on the principles of chess. And they used it for training and education of military officers, but they used it also in real war situations to display realistic war scenarios and to make decisions for real war scenarios. And that is some areas where you still apply gaming simulation for training and education, but also for making decisions for the real world. For real life situations. And that leads to another important aspect that we find in simulation games. It's simulation games, they deal with strategies, scenarios, planning, and decision making. Originally coming from the military, and later, of course, used in many other kinds of application areas, in education, in urban planning, for example, in business, and so on. That is one of the founding fathers, or the founding father of the International Simulation Gaming Association, Professor Duke, from Ann Arbor, an urban planner, and he wrote in the 1974 the book Gaming the Future's Language, one of the Bibles in our discipline. And he saw gaming as the future language, as a language for dealing with complex dynamic systems, to get a better understanding of the reality and complex systems, and then to find ways to design and change systems and social systems, and of course not only social systems, but systems with many different stakeholders, and also technical, socio-technical systems, and so on. Here you can see myself with Dick, with one of his famous games many years back that simulates infrastructure, traffic situations in the United States. I want to use this slide to pay tribute to some important people in my own life, because I'm standing only on the shoulders of giants. So, and the giants for me, where from them I learned the most important lessons in my gaming career is Dick Duke, as I mentioned before, and you saw on the slide before, but Casey Greenblatt, a typical book from her that I really love is Designing Games and Simulations. Paola Rizzi, also coming from the urban planning side, and I think you had her already in a webinar, Dennis Meadows, who told me how to design system thinking models, and they are part of games, and Jan Klabbers, who was very long time General Secretary of the ISAGA, and one of his books, as you can see here on this page, also about principles of gaming and simulation. So these are the giants I want to mention, because everything, all the knowledge you find in my slides is basically from them. So I'm only the voice that you can hear, but the ideas are from these great men and women. So maybe some working definitions, but I don't want to go into definitions also because of time. But of course, gaming simulation, it's a game, it's a form of play, but at the same time, it's also a model of reality, and even more than just a model, it is also a model that can be simulated. So it's about processes and simulation of processes of the real world. And if you take, for example, Monopoly, probably many of you know this kind of famous game. Then if you take the taxonomy of Ellington, they would say, okay, it's maybe a mixture between a game, a simulation, and a case study. Or if you take the idea from Tyagarayan, he would say it's a mix between a game, a simulation, and instructional activity. Of course, many people nowadays just play Monopoly for fun, just as a pure entertainment game and not as an instructional activity. But it could be used as an instructional activity, and originally it was meant as an instructional activity, because it goes back to the landlord game from Elizabeth Maggie in 1903, and she designed the pre-game of Monopoly as a learning game with the goal in mind: demonstrate how rents enrich owners of properties and at the same time impoverish tenants. So she intended to illustrate the negative aspect of concentrating land in private monopolies. So she hoped that when played, the game would lead to an understanding of this unfairness. So it was meant as an educational game. Even now it made victory as an entertainment game, but still it could be used in principle as a simulation game with a proper debriefing to make a learning experience out of it. What we can see here is that we have three basic dimensions. So we have one dimension that is a simulation game is a game. So it for example, it has rules, like all games have rules. And the second important dimension is that it has real people who play the game. So they are going into roles, actors, like in the pure form you find it in the theater play, for example. This is probably a nice scene from Indian drama, maybe another Mahabharata story. Also, of course, coming more from the scientific side, a simulation, like you find it maybe in a flight simulator or something similar. So it has to do with resources that you find in the real world, and they are somehow put into the game or represented into the simulation game. So if all three dimensions come together, not one of those pure dimensions, but if it if the artifact has something of all three dimensions, then we would consider it as part of the gaming simulation discipline. And this idea comes also from Professor Duke, the cone of abstraction. So on the lowest level, on the bottom, you have the reality. Maybe this is from my Japanese colleagues, a picture, unfortunately, from some kind of a real earthquake. So that is something that can happen in the real world, unfortunately. But then the question is how you can deal better with these kind of dramatic situations. And maybe you can use some kind of large-scale simulation as we find it in prevention drill situations, which is also a form of simulation. But if you go the cone of abstraction a little bit more here to the top, then we find more qualitative models of the reality. Maybe here played a game in Kyoto that also deals with certain situations used with students for education, used also with people from the city, with for civil education, for playing through different situations with the population and so on, and how to deal better with these kind of situations. And very often it is important that you want to keep some aspects of fidelity in your game. As you can see here, hopefully some COVID vaccination is put into the arms. But if you want to train nurses in some countries or more poor regions, you maybe have to think, okay, how can I train? And maybe it's a good idea to train not for the first time on the real arm of a real person, but maybe you train it first with some kind of simulated kind of situation. But this is a very sophisticated item, as you can see here in the middle picture. Not every hospital or medical school will be able to afford these kind of arms that are very near to the reality. But maybe you can put the needle also into the orange and still have the same kind of embodied tactile experience. So you keep at least some kind aspect of fidelity, even if it is not exactly, of course, the reality, but some kind of a model of the reality. So the orange as a model for the human skin and for the human arm and for this vaccination process. If you look into what is gaming simulation as a process, you have the reality, and parts of the reality are in a reduced form of complexity put into the game model. Then you have a simulation game. For this, you need a simulation model. You can apply it. So that means that you can facilitate a game, you can play the game. And then it is very important, if you want to have a serious outcome for education, that you have a reflection, so that you have a debriefing of what you have experienced in the game, compare the game with the reality, and make some kind of transfer to the real world. For this, you need some kind of didactic pedagogic model. And sometimes, if you are a scientist, you also want to evaluate what are really the effects of using the game then later in the reality to change really something, to really have the social impact that you wanted to have. So for this, you need some kind of form of evaluation and evaluation models. And I just want to show you some more examples. What can it mean? So this is the famous 21 steps concept of Dick Duke, how to design games, but I don't want to talk about it. I can come back to it if you have some questions. I go only through some pictures that you can see. It is a model from the founding father of ISAGA about how to design games, but in the first steps, it is only to understand the system. And with different tools, like you can see on this picture, like schematics, where you can show and illustrate the flow of processes, or you use system dynamics modeling, causal loop diagrams in order to understand the real system. And that can be then the starting point for also building a game, adding game elements, making a relation between system elements and game elements. So I want to go only through some of these pictures from these kind of design processes. Of course, it is also involved a lot of testing, many kind of test rounds in order to arrive maybe after some iteration to the final game that can be implemented. Jan Klabbers and others, they are talking about the stepping into the magic circle. So if you go into a game, you have maybe a briefing, assuming roles, then you have the micro cycle of the game, play many rounds or phases of the game. And then, as I mentioned already, it is very important to have different steps of debriefing in order to make really a social impact for the real life. Here it is very important that you use many multi kind of dialogue and perspectives to have really a good learning experience. And that is also the basic of the experiential learning cycle, that you have concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, active experimentation, these 4 steps in this kind of learning cycle. And gameplay has to do with active experimentation, concrete experience, but also the debriefing is very important because this has to do and completes the circle with reflective observation, abstract conceptualization. And now I show some examples. I skipped these examples. So I did many kind of games, but I want to use my last minutes for 2 examples. One example is from a project that was done from the German television. And the German television had the idea, okay, in Germany, but it's true for all over the world, the population, the society is becoming more and more diverse. So you find, especially in the cities, you find people with different religion, different color of skin, different educational background, different languages, and so on. So you have many aspects of diversity. And that causes, of course, positive effects, but sometimes also conflict. And how can you live together in the future in a peaceful and sustainable way if you have so much diversity? And so that was the idea. Can we do a simulation game where children, school 5th and 6th grade in the German system, that is about 10 to 12 years old, to give you an idea, can they play games? Can we create games that they play to better understand what is going on and to prepare them for a sustainable and better future? And of course, we say we can do it, but I like always that the design itself is already an educational method. So it's not only play the game for education. So we use the design of the game for education. So that is also important, because also in the design, you always need also real stakeholders. They are the experts. So they should be part of the design team. So therefore, I said, okay, I do it, but only if we select children from schools to be co-designers of the game. And they agreed to it, and then they filmed also the whole design process that was going about 1 year. And then they made a nice documentary that was also shown in the German television. Here with my colleague Thomas Eberle, we designed, we moderated it, but we used real school children from different schools and diverse group of children to be our co-designers, to design together with us. And that was then broadcasted also in the German television. Here you can see some of those pictures. So here we are in the phase of the problem and situation analysis to better understand the system with different methods like mind mapping and other kind of methods that you can already use with children. Of course, there are more sophisticated methods of model building that you cannot use with this age group, but there are plenty of things that you can still already do with kids 10 to 12 years old. And what is also important, that they make experiences in the real world. So we developed together with them interview questions, and they really went outside in several situations where they asked these kind of interviews in the real world and brought that information back into the design of the game. So from the data collection that the kids did in the real world, we started to develop stories that they experienced and that have to do, of course, with this problem situation. And we developed scenarios and events. So you can see here that the kids are quite creative. So the kids also came up with the idea to play it on a game board that displays a city. and that we can use different symbols for things that you will find in a city, like a library, a soccer field, a school building, resident buildings, and so on. And here it is one of the first drafts of one of the children that tells about the aim of the game, the money system involved, the teamwork, steps of play, and so on. And then we went into testing and developing of prototypes only in this more cheap kind of paper format, going then here into a little bit more sophisticated versions with really tactile big blocks that represent, for example, certain kind of buildings or infrastructure and so on. And that was the final game used in the TV setting on a very, very big board. Of course, we have many game elements like city development, a finance system in the game, and therefore we also then developed a computer simulation that is running in the background to calculate certain kind of relationships. And also coping with real events is very important. Like, for example, here this was a not so nice event like a terror attack during a concert. And now the children have to think about how to deal with this situation, because the kids in the game, they go into the role of the mayor of the city and the city council. So they have then always to make decisions for the city and how to deal also with certain kind of positive or negative kind of challenges and problems. There's also emotional embodiment for the actors, because they go into different kind of roles. So they choose, for example, their hobbies, they choose their religion, their nationality, their language, and it is created in a way that kids in the game, they involve with multicultural and really diverse backgrounds, and in the end they have to create a city that takes care that it is a good place for all of the different religions, for example, for all of the different nationalities and languages and so on. So I cannot go too deep into it. Here you can see some of the calculated numbers from the computer simulation that is behind the game, with some kind of indicators for education, for example, security, for the health system, for economic parameters, and so on. The last example that I want to bring up is that you can use, as I said before, not only with children, of course, also with students, the method of gaming in the university curricula. And it is not only just you can use a game to play in a class, of course, instead than what we are doing now, doing a lecture. That is fine. If you do a proper debriefing, it's a great method. But what we really find important is that you use the design of the game as an educational method. And therefore it is, for example, in one of my master classes developed together with my colleague Werner Manal, it is for 3 semesters, 1.5 years. So it's going over a longer period of time. And we are making then real projects for regional partners, for example. So we have, in the first semester, it's more about model building, system thinking, the basics of doing system models and analysis of the problem situation. In the second part, it is then going into simulation, different methods of simulation, and also adding already game elements. And in the third semester, the focus is on the simulation game design. Let me just show you many pictures, and with this we will end. But I show you pictures. So they start in the first seminar with really learning about the basics, model building. We have some educational cases, and they then put it into some kind of system models, this causal loop as one of the methods coming from system dynamics. So they are building their own models, their own system models. At the same time, we start to play some games with them games that are based on system dynamic modeling. So to understand more about gaming, but also understand more about system dynamics and system analysis. For example, this is a game from, it's called Eco-Policy, but a very famous game from one of my first teachers, Dennis Meadows, is a stratagem game about a developing country. And it is really also a game board with many background information about system dynamics interrelationships. You can see here the students study the documents, they make decisions, they get always feedback from after each round of decision from the computer in many different variables. They have to perform team competence because they have to negotiate and bargain in teams, but they have also to apply then their knowledge of systems thinking and systems competence into the game in order to manage the system, in order to manage in the game this developing country and make decisions. Then, of course, we have debriefing. In the second semester, we start taking up real problems from the real world in our region, defining the macro problem, making stakeholder analysis, making again causal loop diagrams, system modeling, put it into, these are some of those pictures, the students working. Then we put it into a computer simulation. So first it starts on paper, but then of course we are putting it into a computer simulation. And also together here with some kind of iterative process, working with paper, working with the computer to make the model better, to test it many times, to refine it, to have run through different scenarios and change the model, to refine the model until we have in the end a good model of the reality. And then in the third semester, we take we take that model, the computer simulation model, but now we add gaming elements, to role play elements, board game elements, whatever it is, different kind of gaming elements. And we connect the simulation model with these gaming elements to make these kind of hybrid games. So here you can see again some of the pictures where the students start to work with different materials, maybe cards, maybe nice little kind of items that you can touch. Yeah, at the end, we have a mix between a computer simulation but as you can see here, very haptic material, cards, game figures, even these kind of wooden block towers to maybe represent something from the reality in the game. And so that is our approach, how we work for also real clients in our region. So the last example that you have seen was for summer tourism in our country. And to create an educational game for this topic, for example. And then these games are then also used by clients, having a real impact. What I have left out in my presentation, that is, of course, I do a lot of evaluation research, but I don't want it to go into it. The time is already over. But you can get some of the references here and look into my scientific papers about the evaluation so that you can see, okay, it's proven, it has really also a social impact for education, but also for changing systems in the reality. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And now I'm open for questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. This is the time for question and answer. Dr. Willie is available for the same. You may go ahead and ask your questions now. So there is a question in the chat box from Larry Chastain. She's asking, are you using artificial intelligence in any of your games?
Yes, not in many of my games, but in some of my more sophisticated games, we use also aspects of artificial intelligence. but not really for the educational games. So I have designed some I would say more sophisticated games for some companies, for the board of directors, for really the top management of bigger companies, for making real decisions, business decisions. And here we are also using artificial intelligence. And I'm also co-founder of a company. 2 years ago we started. We are still very small, but it's a company that is dealing with the problem of big data and artificial intelligence, and to combine it with gamification and gaming elements for different kind of purposes. So you can use it for learning as well. So we have some prototypes that we use for digital games that we use for learning purpose, but also for organizational development, for facilitation of bigger participation processes in change management situations, for example, in companies. So here we are using also aspects of artificial intelligence.
Okay. So one more question from Yash Jaiswal. He's asking, what is the main challenges in gaming simulation design for education and social impact?
The main challenge?
Yeah, the main challenges.
Well, I mean, there are many challenges. Sometimes there are cultural challenges, as I would put it in this way. So what is the understanding of the system where you apply the game, or the culture where you apply the game? So I give you an example. So sometimes in some countries you find the concept, gaming, to play games is only something for smaller children. It's nothing for adult or adult education, or it's not connected so much with hard work, and can it be really used for a serious problem? And so sometimes it's the mindset is a challenge, to convince that gaming is more than just gambling or just simple games for children. It can be also really used for, like it is used in the military and in other contexts, for very serious kind of situations and so on. But sometimes the mindset might be a problem. Then if you really do the design, I found that very often it is not properly made. There is a book that I recommended from Casey Greenblatt, Designing Games and Simulations. And here she points out something that I also would say is very important. You have to understand the system first. If you want to simulate something, if you want to have a simulation game, first you must understand properly the system. And that is sometimes people want to skip too fast, because they like so much maybe game elements. They like dices and pieces and cards, and they already have 100,000 ideas of nice game elements that they would like to include, but they neglect a little bit the really hard work of system analysis, to really understand and to have a good model of the reality. And you have to have very precise definition of the target group and of the objectives of the game. And all these kind of steps have to be taken very seriously. So that is sometimes a challenge, that people don't want to do the hard work involved, really first to have a good simulation before you have a good simulation game, to put it in this way.
Now I invite our panelist to ask the questions. And, Claudia Smith have some question, please.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, may I ask, sir?
I cannot understand you well.
Yes, sir. Sir, you have mentioned about the serious gaming in your presentation. So I would like to know how and where would be the serious game be implemented? How and where would the serious game be implemented, sir?
It's about implementation of serious games. Did I get that right?
Serious games. Yes, sir.
I was not. Can you tell a little bit more what you mean with implementation? I did not
implementation of serious games in higher education, sir.
Well, you can implement it in many different ways. So, for example, in my university, I'm also leading the gaming lab in my university. And so there are different games for different purposes. Of course, we have games for all of the different faculties. If it is social work, or we have also healthcare, we have business, for example. So there are different departments and faculties, of course. And here we have games really for the beginners, for people from the first semester, from the first year of study till bachelor degree, for example. And that is completely a different target group, for example, compared with in the last semesters with the master degree or even later. So you have to see on which level. But there are games for all of the different levels and different topics. If you go into business, you have games for marketing, you have games that focus more on the human resources, you have games that focus more on the financial simulation and aspects. And we try to have we have some kind of a lifelong learning center and didactic center. And what is very important for the implementation is that you have some kind of support. So we have a department that is taking care about the support to train the lecturers and the professors how to use the games, and to provide the games itself, and also the rooms, the resources that you need to play for the games. So that is one thing. So the second thing is it is to design it into the curricula, so that in the curricula there are written documents in our case, where it is also written that you have to use certain kind of games for the class. So it is not so much the freedom of the lecturer to say, okay, I don't like games. It is really also in the official documents. Yeah, for this class you have to use a game. And then there are short games and large games. Short games are maybe just to use in 1 hour to teach a very small kind of subject. But we have also games that go for 2 or 3 days in duration. So that are very intense, very long kind of games. And the last thing is that I want to mention is that, as I showed you in my last example, that we also let the students not only play games with good debriefing, but we let them also design games. And maybe even then later on, some of them, they can even do their master thesis about the topic that they developed over a duration of 2 or 3 semesters, because they really dive deep into the subject matter of the world that they are simulating with their game.
So can we simulate the game for investigation point of view, sir?
Pardon?
Investigation point of view, can we simulate the game?
Which game can you see?
Yes. Sir, for the investigation point of view, as I am faculty in forensic science, so is there any possibility to simulate the game for the investigation point of view for the better understanding of students?
Yes, we are doing a lot of evaluation research. So based on evaluation models. So we are looking into variables. What are the preconditions in order to have good learning from the game, but also within the facilitation of the game. And we are doing a lot of research on what is the best way for the debriefing of the game. Also with some colleagues that are online now. I saw Toshiko online from Japan, one of my dear colleagues, and we research a lot about what is the right methods and ways how to do a good debriefing. Because gaming should be always or must be combined with professional kind of debriefing and transfer methods in order to have really an effect. And then we have short-time evaluation right after the game, but we have also long-term evaluations. What is happening 1 year or even up to 5 years later when the students already left the university, but had it really an impact? To give you one example, I researched a lot with games for entrepreneurship. So we used several kind of startup and entrepreneurship business games. We researched not only, directly after the gameplay, but even we looked, do we have a higher rate of students who really, after their studies, really start up an own company with some kind of success, compared with student groups who have not used games in this area. And we really found out that also there's a significant long-term effect, for example, that people who were trained with these kind of simulation games in entrepreneurship really become more often and more successful entrepreneurs also in the real world afterwards. So that is maybe one example that shows, okay, the game, and if it is used properly, can have a real significant impact in the real world after the education at the university.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other panelists who want to ask the question? Yeah. Elena, please.
Yeah, hello, Willy. Nice to see you.
Hello, Elena.
I have one question for you. You said that you have courses, master courses at your university where students design their own games through 3 semesters. But we live now in Corona times. How do you deal with this problem right now? Do you have these courses right now?
Yes, we have the courses right now. And it's like everything in Corona times, not very good, because as you can see by the game examples that I showed you, my favorite games that also make fun for myself and what I like and what I'm convinced of, and also my research points in this direction, that it is better if you have a combination, not only a pure digital game or a pure computer model, but that you have a hybrid game with also some kind of tactic, with some aspects of role play, and also with some aspects of game pieces that you can touch. Because research also shows that it is good for learning to have some emotions involved, to have some kind of embodied experiences, and so on. I don't want to go too deep into it, but the problem in Corona times is that we cannot really meet in presence, which is a different, of course you can also do online role play, but it is still a different kind of feeling. And especially it is difficult to use game pieces because it's in the moment it's forbidden for us to meet in presence. So we cannot touch the same game pieces, maybe roll a dice or whatever the game piece is. And that makes it really a little bit tricky and hard, and we can only try to adapt to the situation in the best way that we can. We can do it. We can do a lot of things online, and also the students like to do things online. And even in the normal, without Corona, we did already some digital aspects and some things only online. So we are always also look into the digital part of gaming. but it is more hard now to look into the non-digital part of the gaming. And it makes less fun, I must say. But I don't know how the situation is in India or in Russia, where you are. In Austria, from time to time, there are small windows of opportunity where it is again allowed to meet under certain kind of restrictions. And then we are using it to come together with some kind of distance, with the masks and with the all these kind of hygiene kind of regulations. But then we can at least do a little bit of it. But yes, you are right. It's really terribly difficult in the moment.
Okay, thank you.
With this, we end here our Q&A session. Rani, please proceed further.
Yes. Due to shortage of time, we have to end this QA session. And now I would request...
Before Vinod proposes the formal vote of thanks, I would like to thank Kriz for a very excellent and enriching session. It was very, very enriching, as usual. You have always been so enriching and knowledgeable. Your knowledge does the wonders for learners. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that we'll be visiting physically to India in September 2021, when we'll be having ISAGA 2022. Thank you.
So that is the plan and the hope for all of us, that we can meet in person.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, sir. Now I would request Dr. Vinod Damlekar, founder Mantis, to present word of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Willie, my first request, can we exit the screen view? We would like to see all of us back again.
Yes, of course.
Oh, that's nice. To all of you, I must say that Willie was the first ISAGA member I met way back in 2004. That's about 17 years back. Willie was also partially responsible for my being in ISAGA, because that was where I met him in Munich. So if you want to consider what is called the butterfly effect, an effect that happened in the remote past, which is responsible for something big today. Big today is what we had today as a webinar. I think Willie was responsible that where we met way back in August, I think, somewhere towards the end of August, where Willie was chairing the ISAGA 2004 conference in Munich. Something we do not know about Munich is that he's very much aware and likes India very much. Those photos of Mahabharata, etc., are not accidents. To prove to you something, let me ask Willie just one simple question. Willie, may we know the Indian names of your children? Very quickly.
Okay. My children, they have a European name, but also an Indian name. So my daughter's name is, the first name is Katerina, which is a European name, but the second name is Ananda, as you probably know the concept of Ananda. And my son is called Konstantin, but the second name is Govinda. So these are two wonderful Indian names.
Yes, he's closer than that. When I went to his place, I think it was in 2006 or 2012, I don't remember when, he was showing, I mean, he was watching a Shah Rukh Khan film. Apparently he had something like, I don't know whether the number is correct, some 400 CDs of Indian films alone.
Now, that's true. I'm a fan, big fan of Bollywood movie. That's true.
So I would really think that that would be probably the source of his keen interest in simulation gaming. So of course, it's not true, but you would have seen the wide variety of his practice in simulation gaming, from design to facilitation and everything else in between. It's wonderful to listen to Willie whenever he's speaking. He speaks with a lot of concern, a lot of humor, a casual word here and do, and of course, he has the attention of his listeners all the time. Today, we had a breadth and depth all at the same time. I do not know whether anybody counted, but you have gone through 120 slides in the space of just 45 minutes. That's, I think, a Guinness World Record. Thank you, Willie. Thank you also for keeping us engaged and tied down to the screen all the time. I would also like to thank other people who asked questions, such as Dr. Kavita Sharma, Elena, and others. I would have loved to hear voices like Claudia's and Toshiko's also, but somewhere in the background, Irena is also there. I would like to hear Amparo for a while, if it is all right. She's smiling out there, but I don't know. Maybe a hi would be fine. Oh, that would be fine. The faculty members of
thank you, Veena. Thank you.
Yes, and Amparo and all the others, I hope you are going to be here in September for the conference.
We'll try.
Yeah. Many faculty members have come together, of course, under the leadership of Dr. Upinder to make this webinar possible. This is the 11th webinar, I think. My count could be one or two numbers here and there. And I think we have done extremely well, far beyond what we actually expected, which is quite a, we are delighted, we are excited that I hope we can take this further. Thank you all for participation. Thank you all. And I hope that all of you are here the next time as well. Laura, welcome to the ISAGA webinars. I'm seeing you for the first time, I'm sorry. And I'm sure many others are there. Martin is very, very busy, so he has not spoken a word so far. Martin, maybe had a word of greeting or some blessing or something for us. I know I'm provoking you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for the invitation. Nice to see you, Willie. Great, great performance as always. And yes, I have prepared a proposal for a webinar, which I'm gonna to deal with what the Willie doesn't like, because we are exactly on the opposite sides of the spectrums. He loves role play and physical games. I love digital games. So what I would like to talk about and also share my experiences, because I already built 13 different digital games, and then with different technologies, starting from online through mobile to also VR games recently. And I would like to basically share my experiences and thoughts on the usage of technologies for the game-based learning in different contexts, and also a little bit in connection of the design complexity, because design complexity of such games is a little bit higher than the board games. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. We have had two other people I can see on the panel. Jaga, who spoke a fortnight back, and David, I hope, who will speak somewhere in the future, especially on the topic of facilitation and debriefing, which are very, very dear to him. David, are you there? Could we hear you, even if we cannot see you? Aha. Is there? Ah, there he is.
Hello.
Hi, David.
So I'm here. I've been listening very carefully. Fantastic presentation.
Thanks, David.
David is also responsible for my entry to ISAGA 17 years back. And therefore, he also deserves a part of the credit. The third person in the quiz is, of course, Elizabeth, the first person whom I connected. I hope David will be here soon speaking to us. David, incidentally, has been a very, very long-term editor of the ISAGA journal, Simulation and Gaming, which is now currently being partially done by Willie. I hope all of you get to listen to David very soon. David, I hope that's a promise.
And the new development is that is handed over to Toshiko.
Okay. Toshiko is also there somewhere in the lines, waiting for her to say yes. It's only been about 4 or 5 months so far, but I'm sure she'll be here to speak to everybody. Thank you all. I hope we get to see you at our next webinar very, very soon. And we have a conference in September. Remember that we need you to be there with your papers, presentations, workshops, and the like. Thank you. Good day. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, really.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.